Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. I always assumed the only blue pills in my life would be my son's toy bricks scattered across the living room at 3 in the morning. I was wrong. My name is Marcus Hale. I am 39, and I work in information technology, the kind of job that makes people nod politely and change the subject. I fix computers, reset passwords, unjam printers, and keep quiet when meetings fall apart because someone clicked the wrong link. The thing about being the unseen IT person is that you see everything people forget to hide. When I crawl under a desk to plug in a cable, conversations happen right over my head. When I remote into a workstation, screens stay unlocked. Phones sit face up. People speak as if the room is empty. Secrets show up in plain sight, not because I chase them, but because the world throws them at me. That is how I learned to notice patterns. That is also how I learned something was wrong at home, long before I found anything in a pocket. My life became a series of small contradictions that did not add up. My wife, Nia Hale, was 37 and a marketing executive at Pinnacle Solutions in Columbus, Ohio. She had the kind of presence that made people step aside without being asked. Her suits looked tailored, her hair was always precise, and her schedule was treated like a calendar of national importance. We had been married 12 years, together 14. For most of that time, I trusted her without needing proof. Then, over 6 months, my trust started getting tested by little things that kept repeating. Little things become big when they never stop. Nia started working late more often, and she stopped explaining it the way she used to. Calls that could have been taken anywhere were taken in the other room. Her phone began living face down on the nightstand. She changed her passcode, then acted offended that I noticed. New laundry appeared in the laundry, and I never saw it on her. Our intimacy went from occasional to almost non-existent, and every time I tried to talk, she answered like I was interrupting something important. She kept saying one word: promotion. "You are being paranoid, Marcus," she would say, not looking at me. "I am up for promotion. This is about our future." I would nod because arguing felt like begging. But our future did not match the way she moved her phone when I walked into the room. Our future did not match the way she stopped letting me see her screen. I kept telling myself I was tired, overthinking, imagining things. I wanted normal back, so I acted like normal still existed. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in March while I was doing laundry. I had Nia's charcoal blazer on my arm, the one with silver buttons she liked to wear to client meetings. My hand slid into a pocket, expecting nothing. Instead, my fingers touched a small plastic bottle. Inside were blue pills. I stood there staring like the room had shifted. I was not a doctor, but I knew what those pills were for. And I knew Nia did not need them for any medical condition she had ever mentioned. I also knew those pills were not for me. Our bedroom had been quiet for months, quiet enough that the silence felt like a third person in the bed. I held that bottle like it was evidence, because it was. My first thought was strangely calm, so that is why the laundry changed. My second thought was not calm at all, but I did not smash anything. I did not storm upstairs. I did not call her names. I did what I always do when something breaks. I started looking for the actual mechanism behind it. Problem solving is automatic for people in my field. When a system behaves oddly, you trace the inputs. When something fails, you isolate the cause. When someone lies, you look for where the lie intersects with reality. So I pocketed the bottle, drove to a drugstore, and bought a bottle of over-the-counter sleep aids. The pills were close enough in size and color to pass at a glance. Back home, I washed my hands, sat at the kitchen table, and did what I later called Operation Switcheroo. I replaced every blue pill in the bottle with a blue sleep aid. Same bottle. Same count, different outcome. Then I put the bottle back where I found it and slid the real pills into my toolbox like spare parts. I could hear Nia moving upstairs. Quick steps, the sound of drawers opening and shutting. From the top of the stairs she called, "Marcus, have you seen my blazer? The gray one with the silver buttons." I answered evenly, "Laundry room. Just finished washing it." She appeared in the doorway looking rushed but polished. Her makeup was perfect. Her eyes were not. Something about them looked tight, like she was holding a thought in place. She grabbed the blazer and checked the pockets quickly. Her fingers found the bottle, and I watched her face loosen by a fraction, like she had confirmed something important. "I'm going to be late," she said. "Big presentation tomorrow. Terrence and I need to go over the numbers." Terrence. That was the name. Terrence Lewis had been mentioned more and more lately, always in a way that sounded professional and necessary. "Terrence is sharp," Nia would say. "He is demanding, but he gets results." That night she repeated it again while slipping on earrings. I kept folding towels and asked casually, "Terrence is the one with the black Range Rover, right?" She smiled without warmth. "Yes, the company is lucky to have him." I answered, "I am sure it is." Then I kissed her cheek like everything was fine. She smelled like expensive perfume and something I could not name. "Do not wait up," she said. "You know how cranky you get when your sleep gets disrupted." I nodded. "I will probably be asleep." She gave a small laugh, as if we were sharing a harmless joke, and walked out. When the door shut, I stood still for a moment, listening to the quiet. Then I went to my home office, opened my laptop, and did what I do when I need to learn about a person quickly. I researched Terrence Lewis. Social media is generous if you know where to look. Terrence was 42, divorced, and confident in the way some men get when they have never been challenged. The Range Rover showed up in photos like a supporting character. He posted about leadership, discipline, and winning. He also posted selfies in expensive restaurants, always angled to show the watch. I kept clicking until I found what mattered. Terrence was not just a colleague. He was Nia's direct supervisor. That one detail made everything more dangerous. My phone buzzed. Nia texted, "Working late. Do not wait up. Love you." I stayed at the screen and typed, "Love you too. Sweet dreams." Then I put the phone down and waited. I was not proud of what I had done, but I needed the truth more than I needed comfort. I had already crossed the line when I swapped the pills. I told myself I was collecting evidence, not revenge. Still, my hands were steady when I checked the clock. I knew timing mattered. Being married for 12 years teaches you rhythms. Nia's late nights followed a pattern, and her excuses sounded rehearsed. When she announced a business retreat for the following weekend, I did not pretend to be surprised. "Terrence reserved a suite at a resort outside the city," she said while packing an overnight bag. "It is for quarterly projections and strategy." I watched her fold a black lingerie set and place it carefully on top. She caught me looking and said quickly, "It is comfortable for sleeping." "It sounds very professional," I said, keeping my voice level. She nodded too fast. "It is." I helped load her bag into her car, playing the supportive husband because that role gave me access. I hugged her, and she hugged back the way someone hugs when they want the moment to end. "I will call you tonight," she promised. "Drive safe," I said. The moment her taillights disappeared, I grabbed my keys and followed at a distance. Modern technology makes hiding difficult when the other person knows where to look. Nia's phone was still connected to our family plan, and location services were still enabled. She had forgotten the setting existed. The resort, Hocking Hills Grand Lodge, sat an hour southeast of Columbus, tucked into hills and trees, the kind of place that sold privacy as a feature. I parked across the road and watched the entrance. Soon, Nia's car pulled in. Terrence's Range Rover followed. They walked inside together. They laughed at something on his phone. His hand rested briefly at the small of her back, guiding her toward the elevator. I did not charge in. I did not take pictures from the bushes. I did not want to be the story. I wanted the truth to come out with witnesses and paperwork. I waited, then called the front desk from my car. "Hocking Hills Grand Lodge. This is Kayla," a cheerful voice answered. I said, "Hi, I'm trying to reach my wife, Nia Hale. She is there for a business conference. I think she left medication at home. I want to make sure she does not need me to bring it." Kayla put me on hold briefly to check. Then she returned and said, "Yes, I see a Nia Hale checked in." I asked, "Could you connect me to her room?" She offered to, but I changed my approach. "Actually, could you tell me if she is sharing the suite with her colleague, Terrence Lewis? If so, I might need to bring medication for both. There was a pause long enough to hear her thinking. Then she said carefully, "Our records show Ms. Hale and Mr. Lewis are registered in the same suite." I thanked her and hung up. I sat there with the engine off, staring at the lodge windows. My throat felt tight, but my mind stayed clear. The swap pills would take time. I had read the dosage and effects. If Terrence took one expecting a performance, he would get sedated. It would not harm him, but it would disrupt whatever they planned. I told myself disruption was all I wanted. Still, when I looked at the lodge, I felt something darker beneath the logic. I kept watching the entrance. I waited for the consequences to arrive on schedule. At 10:47 p.m., an ambulance rolled into the drive, lights flashing, siren off. 2 paramedics moved fast with a stretcher. I watched them disappear inside. 20 minutes later, they came out with Terrence on the stretcher, awake but groggy, his head lolling as if his body refused to cooperate. Nia trailed beside them, frantic, her phone pressed to her ear. She looked like someone trying to keep a story straight while watching it collapse. My phone rang a moment later, and her name lit up the screen. I answered calmly. "Marcus," she said, voice high and shaky. "Something terrible happened." I asked, "Are you okay?" She said, "It is Terrence. He collapsed. We were going over the presentation, and he just fell over." I said, "That sounds serious." She kept talking quickly. "They think it might be a reaction to medication. They are taking him to the hospital in Lancaster." I asked, "Do you want me to come?" Her answer came too fast. "No." Then she softened it. "No, there is no point. I will probably be home late." I told her to keep me updated. She said, "I love you," in a voice that sounded like a script line. I answered, "I love you too." Then I ended the call and let out a slow breath. I did not celebrate, but I felt a grim satisfaction. Round 1 went to the person who noticed what others missed. Still, I knew this was only the opening. People who lie do not stop because they get scared once. They adjust. They cover. They shift blame. The next phase would depend on what they did next. The next morning, my friend Jamal Coleman called. He was a high school physical education teacher and somehow always knew what people were saying before the people finished saying it. "You are not going to believe what I heard," he said. I answered, "Try me." Jamal said, "Your wife's boss collapsed at some resort last night. People are saying food poisoning, but my cousin works at the emergency room. They were asking about drug interactions, like he took something that did not match what he thought it was." I made my voice sound surprised. "That is strange," I said. Jamal lowered his voice, and the woman who came in with him was acting nervous. Designer dress, wedding, ring, the whole thing. I asked, "Was it a work retreat?" Jamal said, "That is what they are claiming, but everyone is talking." When I hung up, I did not feel relieved. I felt momentum. A story like that does not stay contained. By Monday, I expected Pinnacle Solutions to turn it into office gossip, and I expected gossip to generate mistakes. I had a contact in Pinnacle's IT department, Malik Owens, a quiet man who hated drama but loved facts. He called me during his lunch break. "Marcus, you need to hear this," he said. "Your wife and Terrence are the talk of the office." I answered, "People love to speculate." Malik said, "This is more than speculation. There is talk that hotel footage shows them checking in together. People say they were touching, laughing, and acting like a couple." I kept my tone flat. How would anyone get that footage? Malik hesitated. Terrence's ex-wife hired an investigator. I had almost forgotten Terrence had an ex-wife. That detail mattered. Malik continued, "Her name is Regina Lewis. She has been suspicious for months. Now she is angry." I paused, then said, "Malik, I need a favor." He asked, "What kind?" I said, "If you see emails or messages that mention Nia or Terrence, forward them to me." Malik went quiet. "Are you sure you want that?" I said, "I am already living it. I just need the truth in writing." He exhaled and said, "Okay." Within an hour, my inbox filled with forwarded chatter, threads of gossip, rumors about HR, and one chain that mattered. Nia was emailing a friend at work, Tasha Rowe, and HR in ways that read like coordination, not coincidence. They discussed schedule adjustments, cover stories, and how to keep Terrence's situation quiet. Then I saw an email from Nia with a subject line, "Damage Control." She wrote, "Terrence thinks someone may have tampered with his medication. He is paranoid. What if Marcus suspects something? We need to handle this before it gets out of hand." I read that line twice. It told me she had noticed. It told me she was afraid. It also told me she still saw me as a problem to manage, not a person she had hurt. I forwarded the entire chain to a new address I created, one that did not connect to my identity. Then I started planning what came next. I did not need to invent drama. I needed to turn their own actions into a mirror. People hate mirrors when they have been living behind curtains. I decided my next moves would be small, legal, and unsettling. That evening, Nia came home acting like the weekend was ordinary. She kissed my cheek, asked about our son's homework, and started dinner as if she had not been at a resort with another man. I played along until it was just the two of us in the kitchen. "How is Terrence feeling?" I asked while chopping vegetables. Her shoulders tightened. "Better," she said. "Doctors think it was a reaction." I nodded. "That must have been scary for you." She said, "Terrifying. One minute we were going over reports, and the next he was on the floor." I looked up and said, "On the floor? I thought you said he collapsed during dinner." She froze, then corrected herself quickly. "The restaurant floor," she said. I kept my face neutral. "Right," I answered. She watched me as if waiting for the trap to close. I let it stay open. "I'm just glad you were both okay," I said. Her eyes flicked away. She was thinking about what I knew. The truth was I knew enough to make her nervous, and nervous people make errors. I needed her to keep making them. Over the next week, I implemented what I called Operation Paranoia. I did not hack accounts or steal passwords. I did not do anything illegal. I used coincidence and visibility. I showed up at the coffee shop near Pinnacle during lunch hours because I actually could. I scheduled a service call with a client in the same building as their downtown meetings. I created a blank social media account and followed both Nia and Terrence, liking harmless posts at strange times, like someone watching them. I never messaged. I only existed where they could notice. Then I escalated slightly. I left a bottle of sleep aids on Nia's home desk with a note that said, "Thought you might need these." No signature. She found it and stayed at it longer than necessary. That night she asked, "Did you leave this here?" I said, "No. I assumed it was yours." Her face tightened, and she walked away without answering. The next day, I mailed a simple card to Regina Lewis at her office. It said, "Hope Terrence feels better." I signed it, "The Hale Family." It was polite, and it pointed in a direction Nia would not like. By the weekend, the tension had changed in our house. Nia was quieter, watchful, checking her phone in ways that looked like checking for threats. She started asking questions that sounded casual but were not. "What were you doing near downtown yesterday?" she asked one evening. I answered, "Client call." She said, "Tasha said she saw you near the coffee shop." I shrugged. "I go there sometimes. It is close to my route." She narrowed her eyes. "Terrence thought he saw you in the garage." I said, "That is possible. Pinnacle is in a busy area." She stayed as if trying to catch a twitch. 12 years of marriage taught me how to keep my face steady. Finally, she said, "It just feels like a strange coincidence." I answered, "Life is full of strange coincidences." Then I added softly, like someone collapsing after taking medication that should not cause that reaction. Her color drained. "What do you mean?" she asked. I smiled without showing my teeth. "Nothing," I said. "Just a thought." I watched her swallow hard and walk away. I did not feel victorious. I felt resolved. The more she panicked, the closer she got to exposing herself. The moment I truly saw the fear was when I intercepted a text thread between Nia and Tasha on our home network. I did not read private photos or invade bank logins. I only monitored traffic, and the message content came through in plain view because they were careless. Tasha wrote, "Regina hired a private investigator. She is asking questions." Nia wrote, "We have to be careful." Tasha wrote, "What if Marcus is behind this?" Then Nia's reply cut off, like she stopped mid-sentence. That incomplete thought told me she was spinning in circles. That night, Nia slept beside me with her back turned. I lay awake, listening to her breathing and thinking about how quickly someone can become a stranger. I did not want a screaming match. I wanted an ending that was clean, undeniable, and final. Subtle fear had done its job. It made them reckless. Now I needed an outcome with witnesses, documents, and consequences that did not depend on my word against hers. I decided to stop playing defense. I called in sick the next morning, got dressed, and drove to the one person who already had leverage, Regina Lewis. Regina lived in a quiet neighborhood in Dublin, Ohio, in a house that looked like stability from the outside. I parked, walked up, and rang the bell. When she opened the door, she studied me like she was taking inventory. I said, "Ms. Lewis, my name is Marcus Hale. My wife works with Terence." Her eyes narrowed. "I know who you are," she said. "You are Nia's husband." I nodded. "I think our spouses have been having an affair." Regina did not gasp or ask for proof. She stepped aside and said, "Come in." That told me she was already living with suspicion. Inside, her living room was filled with framed photos that now looked like exhibits, vacations, birthdays, holiday smiles that did not match the present. Regina poured coffee with hands that shook slightly. "How long have you known?" she asked. I said, "A few months." She nodded like that matched her own timeline. "Terence has been dishonest before," she said, "but this one has been louder." She reached into a folder on her side table and pulled out investigator reports, dates, times, hotel receipts, and photos of Nia and Terence entering places together. She had enough to break him in court. She had been waiting for the right trigger. I placed my own printed emails and message logs on the table. Regina read them silently, jaw tightening with each line. I said, "They are not just having an affair. They are coordinating cover stories, using company time, and now they are panicking. That means they will take bigger risks." Regina looked up. "What do you want from me?" she asked. I answered, "I want this to end in a way they cannot talk their way out of." Regina sat back and considered. Then she said, "There is a company event Friday night. They will be there." I said, "Then we use Friday night." The event was Pinnacle Solutions' annual holiday party, held early that year at the Corporate Conference Center in Dayton, Ohio, because the company was celebrating a major acquisition. Nia had been talking about it for weeks. "It is important for networking," she said. "Terence and I will discuss client strategy." I told Regina, "If we do this, I need to look surprised." Regina said, "You need to look like a man who just learned his life is not what he thought." I said, "I can't do that." She introduced me to her investigator, Simone Bryant, a compact woman with a briefcase and a calm expression. Simone said simply, "If you want it public, keep it factual." Friday night came quickly. The conference center was decorated in silver and gold. A bar was set up under bright lights. Employees moved in clusters, laughing too loudly, holding drinks like props. Nia arrived in a black cocktail dress that made her look untouchable. Terence arrived in a tailored suit, smiling like he owned the building. They tried to keep their distance, but their eyes kept finding each other. They spoke in corners. Their hands brushed too often. They acted like everyone else was too busy to notice. They were wrong. I stood across the room watching, waiting for the moment we planned. At exactly 9:30 p.m., Simone walked in with a briefcase and a direct path. She approached the bar where Terence and Nia stood. Her voice was calm but loud enough to carry. "Terence Lewis," she said. "Nia Hale." Both of them turned, confusion flashing. Simone continued, "I am Simone Bryant. I am serving documents on behalf of Regina Lewis." The room quieted as if someone lowered a volume knob. Simone opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of photographs, printed emails, and receipts. She said, "Mr. Lewis, divorce paperwork has been filed. This is the evidence that will be presented." Then she looked at me and added, "Mr. Hale, these copies are for you." Simone handed me a thick manila envelope. I took it with shaking hands, shaking by choice, and opened it slowly. The first photo showed Nia and Terence checking in at the lodge together. The next showed them in an elevator, kissing. Another showed them leaving the same suite the next morning. I looked up at Nia and said loudly, "Nia, what is this?" The room reacted instantly. People leaned in. Phones appeared. Someone whispered, "That is her husband." Nia's face drained. Terrence's mouth opened slightly as if he wanted to deny the paper in my hands. "Marcus, I can explain," Nia said, stepping forward. I held up the photos. "Explain what?" I asked. "Explain why you lied to me for months. Explain why you were with your boss at a resort while telling me it was work." Nia's voice trembled. "It is not what it looks like." I stared at her as if she was speaking another language. "It looks like my wife has been cheating and making a fool out of me," I said. People murmured. Someone behind us said, "That is Terrence's team." Tasha stood near the edge of the crowd, frozen, eyes wide. Terrence tried to step in. "Marcus, we should discuss this privately," he said, voice controlled. I turned to him. "Privately?" I repeated, "Like you and my wife have been doing privately." Then I said the line I knew would make him flinch. "Let us also discuss your medical emergency at the resort. The one caused by medication that did not do what you expected." The room went dead quiet. Terrence's face shifted from pale to sickly. Nia's eyes snapped to him, then back to me, as if trying to figure out who knew what. Terrence took a half step back. "You did something," he said, voice tight. I answered, "I did not poison you." Then I added, evenly, "You collapsed because you took something you should not have been taking in the first place." Gasps and murmurs spread. The bartender stopped moving. Terrence's hands trembled. Nia grabbed my arm. "Please," she whispered, "not here." I pulled my arm free. "We are past choosing the right place," I said. "You chose the place when you chose him." Security started moving toward us, but the damage was already permanent. As security approached, Terrence made the mistake of trying to control the narrative. He raised his voice slightly and said, "This is being exaggerated." A woman near the bar replied, "The photos are not exaggerated." Another person said, "HR is going to have a field day." Phones kept recording. Nia's eyes darted from face to face, realizing she was not the admired executive in the room anymore. She was the headline. Simone stood quietly at the side, expression unchanged, as if she was watching paperwork complete itself. Security finally stepped between us and asked us to leave. I complied, looking shattered, because shattered was what I needed to appear. Outside in the parking lot, cold air hit like a slap. Nia stood by her car crying, phone in hand, probably calling Tasha or anyone who could tell her what to do next. Terrence followed us out, anger tightening his shoulders. He walked straight to me and said, "You could have killed me with those pills." I answered, "You are standing here, so I did not." He grabbed my shoulder. "You think you are clever," he said. I turned, calm, and said, "I think you are reckless." He swung at me, and I moved. I had been taking self-defense classes for 2 months, not because I wanted violence, but because I refused to feel helpless. I redirected his punch and forced him back against the hood of his Range Rover. The alarm blared, lights flashing. "Stay down," I said. Terrence struggled, then stopped when he realized people were watching through the glass doors. He hissed, "Your wife came to me." I leaned closer and said quietly, "My wife is responsible for her choices, and you are responsible for yours." Then I said it plainly, loud enough for him to hear, but not loud enough to entertain the crowd. "You are a middle-aged man chasing power through other people's marriages. That ends now." I released him. He straightened his suit with shaking hands, climbed into his Range Rover, and drove away with the alarm still sounding in the night air. Nia tried to speak as he left. "Marcus, please," she said, eyes swollen. I looked at her and said, "I do not want a performance. I want the truth." She shook her head and whispered, "I made a mistake." I answered, "This was not one mistake. This was months of choices." She reached for my hand and I stepped back. Then I walked to my car and drove home alone. The next day, videos of the confrontation were circulating among employees. By Sunday, local business blogs had picked it up. By Monday, Pinnacle Solutions could not pretend it was private anymore. Monday morning, an email went out. Nia and Terrence were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Regina filed formally for divorce, and her attorney moved quickly. Nia spent the day making calls, trying to reframe the story. I heard pieces of it when she spoke at home, voice soft, crying at the kitchen counter while thinking I could not hear her. He is having a breakdown, she told someone. He has been following me. But the evidence was printed, photographed, and witnessed by dozens of co-workers who had watched her stand there with the truth in her face. That is the problem with public proof. It does not care how you spin. While she tried to salvage her reputation, I prepared my exit. I consulted a lawyer, organized documents, and reviewed what I could do legally without crossing lines. I did not want revenge that could boomerang into court. I wanted protection. On Wednesday evening, when Nia went to dinner with her sister in Newark, I implemented my final phase. First, I transferred the balance of our joint savings into an account in my name. It was legal access to marital funds, and my lawyer confirmed the process. Second, I changed the locks on the house, which was solely in my name, a decision we had made years earlier for tax reasons. Third, I packed Nia's belongings into labeled boxes and stacked them neatly in the garage like a careful mover. Then I printed copies of everything: emails, texts, photos, hotel receipts, and a clean timeline. I placed a stack on the kitchen table with a note. Nia, I have filed for divorce on grounds of adultery. I have been aware of your relationship with Terrence. I have taken steps to protect my financial interests. Your belongings are in the garage. The locks have been changed. Call before you pick up your things. My lawyer will contact yours. I did not add insults. I did not add threats. I let the facts do what they always do. When Nia came home and found herself locked out, she reacted exactly as I expected. She rang the doorbell repeatedly, pounded the door, and shouted my name. When that failed, she called me, but I had blocked her number. I watched from an upstairs window, not with joy, but with a quiet certainty that the old pattern was over. She tried the back door, then the garage. She called a locksmith, but he asked for proof of residence. Her ID still showed an old address and her maiden name. He refused. Finally, she called the police. 2 officers arrived while I stood in the hallway, ready to speak calmly. I opened the door in pajamas, looking confused on purpose. One officer said, "Sir, this woman says she lives here and you changed the locks." I said, "This is my residence. I'm Marcus Hale." I showed my license and the deed. I said, "She is my wife. We are divorcing. The house is solely in my name." Nia pleaded, "He locked me out illegally." I answered, "Her belongings are packed in the garage. She can collect them with notice, but she does not live here anymore." The officers looked at each other, then said to Nia, "This is a civil matter. You will need to work living arrangements through attorneys." Nia's face collapsed as if she had expected the badge to fix what her choices broke. After the police left, she stood in the driveway for nearly an hour calling people. I heard fragments through the cracked window. He changed the locks. He took the money, just for one night. Eventually, Tasha arrived in a compact car. They loaded a few essentials and drove away, leaving the rest boxed in my garage. I slept more deeply that night than I had in months. The next morning brought another visitor. Terrence showed up around 8 in his Range Rover, wearing a suit that looked expensive and strained. He walked up as if he had a right to speak. "Marcus," he called, "we need to talk." I stepped onto the porch holding coffee and said, "Terrence, you should not be here." He said, "You cannot throw her out like that." I answered, "I did not throw her out. She walked out of our marriage months ago." He tried to sound moral. "She needs a place to stay." I said, "Offer her yours." Terrence's expression flickered. "My ex threw me out," he muttered. "I am in a hotel." I nodded once. "That is not my problem." He stepped closer, anger rising. "You think you have won a game." I said, "I do not think I won anything. I think I stopped losing." Then I told him, "Get in your vehicle and leave. If you contact me again, I will treat it as harassment and handle it through legal channels." He stayed, weighing options, then turned and drove away without another word. That afternoon my lawyer called. "Marcus, Nia's attorney, wants to discuss the settlement," he said. I asked, "What is she asking for?" He replied, "Half the house, half the savings, alimony, and a no-fault divorce." I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was insulting. I said, "Counter, no alimony." No claim to the house. She keeps her personal property in her car. I have evidence of adultery, and we have multiple witnesses from the party. My lawyer warned, divorces can get ugly. I answered, then she should remember she is the one who made it public. 3 days later, Nia signed. No contest, no alimony, no claim to the house or the savings. She collected her boxes with a relative present and did not look at me. Terrence left Pinnacle Solutions soon after, taking a job in another state where fewer people knew his name. Regina finalized her divorce and rebuilt her life without him. Tasha was fired for her role in covering the affair, and Pinnacle made a public example out of policy violations. 6 months later, I ran into Nia in a downtown Columbus coffee shop. She looked tired, quieter, and smaller. She said, "I am sorry." I said, "I accept that you said it." Then I stood, paid my bill, and walked out feeling something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. If you make it to the end, you already know the lesson. Respect has consequences. Smash like, share this with someone who needs a reminder, and subscribe for more real, jaw-dropping stories like this. Pinned comments have a question for you. Go answer it. The end.